Welcome, dear friends. Today we will immerse ourselves in the fascinating world of coffee, a drink that has been inspiring and energizing millions of people around the world for many centuries. Join us on this exciting journey where we will reveal the secrets of the perfect coffee enjoyment. The history of coffee goes back centuries, starting with the ancient civilizations of the Middle East, but its exact roots remain a mystery. According to legend, in the 9th century, the Ethiopian shepherd Kaldi discovered that his goats, eating red berries, did not sleep at night. He himself experienced the invigorating effect of the berries and shared them with the monks, who began to use them to maintain vigor during night prayers. The first records of the coffee berry drink date back to 600 and are associated with Cairo and Mecca. Homer, Al-Razi and Ibn Sina mentioned it as a cure for drowsiness. In the 15th century, Sufi monks in Yemen used coffee in rituals, and grain exports from the Yemeni port were strictly controlled. The spread of coffee began when Baba Budan took the beans out of Mecca, breaking Yemen's monopoly on the coffee trade. The Arabs were the first coffee merchants, and it was only in Arabia that it could be purchased. Turkey then assumed the role of the main distributor, distributing coffee throughout Persia, Syria, Egypt and Greece in the 15th and 16th centuries. The Arabs prohibited the cultivation of coffee trees outside their territories, but in the 17th century the Dutch circumvented these restrictions by bringing plants to Europe, where the first coffee shops soon appeared. Starting with Italy, it is believed that the ancestors of the Oromo people in Ethiopia were the first to discover the invigorating effect of coffee, but the claims are not supported by evidence. And there is no evidence of anyone in Africa who knew about coffee before the 17th century. In 1200, coffee was brewed from the dried shell of the beans. Later, the practice of frying the shell on coals appeared, after which it was poured with boiling water for half an hour. Today, more than 100 varieties of coffee are known, and the best of them are famous for their strength and aroma. Coffee quickly gained popularity in the Arab world, which led to the opening of the first coffee shops. These establishments have become a place of communication, games and political debates, reminiscent of modern ones. However, when coffee shops became centers of freedom of thought, causing dissatisfaction with the authorities, coffee was under threat. The authorities closed coffee shops and banned the drink, making its preparation a secret domestic ritual, similar to the history of wine, which they also tried to ban. After the Prohibition period, coffee became even more common. In the 14th and 15th centuries, Arab traders began to cultivate coffee trees and export roasted coffee. Smuggling plants from Ethiopia to Yemen, they founded the first coffee plantations. Yemeni Arabs, having stolen a coffee tree, sold only roasted grains, prohibiting the export of green ones. This is how coffee spread across the Middle East and then got to Europe. By the 16th century, interest in Arabic coffee was growing in Europe thanks to the stories of travelers. In 1580, coffee beans reached Italy, opening this drink to Europeans. Venetian merchants sold coffee at high prices, but they tried to ban it, considering it a devil's drink. But in the end, the Pope approved coffee, and it became available to a wider audience. The Dutch smuggled coffee into England, where the first coffee shop opened in 1637. The word coffee has spread around the world through the Dutch language. In the 1640s, coffee shops began to open all over mainland Europe, starting in Venice. They quickly became popular in Austria, France, Germany and the Netherlands, attracting the cultural elite and thinkers. Many of these ancient coffee shops are still in operation and are known for being visited by such personalities as Voltaire, George Sand, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Napoleon Bonaparte, Johann Goethe, Felix Mendelssohn and Giacomo Casanova. Coffee shops have become places of knowledge for students, surpassing university lectures. They gave rise to important organizations such as Lloyd's of London, which originated in a London coffee shop. In New York, a coffee shop on the second floor has turned into an exchange, which has become the largest in the world today. The Dutch brought coffee to New Amsterdam in the 1660s, which was later renamed New York, and began distributing coffee across America, and coffee shops transformed into taverns. In America, the Green Dragon coffee shop became a gathering place for revolutionaries, which influenced the beginning of the War of Independence. In 1665, coffee was imported to Russia, where Tsar Alexei Romanov began to use it on the advice of a doctor as a remedy for various ailments. His son, Peter the Great, inspired by the Dutch experience, actively promoted coffee culture in Russia. This tradition is reflected in the advertising of the 2000s with the slogan, "We will drink coffee, and we will raise the power." Holland, controlling the islands of Java, Sumatra and Ceylon, played a key role in the spread of coffee, creating the first plantations in Asia and South America, and Amsterdam became the European center of the coffee trade. The mayor of Amsterdam gifted Louis XIV with coffee trees, which led to the creation of the Bourbon plantation in France and the emergence of the popular Bourbon coffee variety. Most Arabica varieties are descended from this variety, bred in the 18th century. The Dutch spread coffee to America, and Brazil became the largest supplier. In Jamaica, the British grow an expensive Blue Mountain variety. Between 1732 and 1734, Johann Sebastian Bach wrote the Coffee Cantata, protesting against attempts by the German authorities to ban coffee. This musical work praising coffee has become one of his most performed compositions. The Boston Tea Party of 1773, an act of protest against the British tea tax, was the catalyst for the American Revolution and contributed to the independence of the United States and the formation of its democratic institutions. This event also led to the popularization of coffee in the United States, which has become a symbol of patriotism. Today, the United States and Brazil are the largest coffee consumers, and Finland is the leader in coffee consumption per capita. Coffee, having spread to Europe in the 17th century, became a catalyst for colonial slavery. Its popularity prompted empires to grow it in colonies using slave labor. By the 18th century, coffee had become a key commodity of the colonial trade. Slaves on plantations from Indonesia to Latin America grew coffee, which led to the tragedy in Haiti in 1791 and the subsequent dominance of Brazil in coffee production. Brazil, which became the last country to abolish slavery in 1888, made coffee the basis of its economy and social structure, which was reflected in the statement of a Brazilian parliamentarian in 1880 about the close connection between coffee and slaves. Brazil is coffee, and coffee is Negroes. In the 19th century, Brazil became a leading producer of coffee due to the use of slave labor from Africa and large-scale clearing of tropical forests. This has led to lower coffee prices and its spread among all segments of the population. Despite the fact that coffee was highly valued in Europe until the 18th century, later it was considered harmful, and only in the 20th century coffee became popular again. By the end of the 19th century, bagged roasted coffee became available in stores, allowing people to make it at home. The appearance of steam coffee makers and French presses indicates the growing popularity of coffee. Today, coffee machines have become commonplace in homes and offices. In the 1890s, coffee returned to Africa, where plantations began in Kenya and Tanzania, closing its global distribution. Coffee in Tanzania has been officially mentioned since 1898, but already in the 16th century, the local Haya people cultivated Robusta brought from Ethiopia. They created a special product, anbani, by cooking and smoking coffee berries with herbs for chewing during rituals. At the end of the 19th century, Arabica was introduced to Tanganyika, and with the development of transport, coffee plantations expanded to Kilimanjaro. By 1911, coffee began to be grown throughout the country, which contributed to its export to Europe and the glory of East Africa as a region for coffee cultivation, all under the control of the German colonial administration. After the First World War, Tanganyika became a British protectorate, where the coffee industry was actively developing. By 1925, more than 10 million coffee seedlings had been planted, and in 1930 the Kilimanjaro Cooperative Union Kiku was founded, which still functions today. After independence in 1961, Tanzania continued to support the coffee industry by expanding plantations and conducting research through TACRI and other organizations. Coffee production affects 300, 0 to 400 OO households, providing the lives of about 2.5 million people. Let's go back to the end of the 19th century, when instant coffee was created, obtained by roasting, grinding and processing the beans with hot water, followed by drying to powder or pieces. Earlier in the 20th century, a decaffeination method was developed to remove caffeine from coffee, which led to the appearance of decaf, suitable for people with high blood pressure. Coffee, especially its caffeine, contributed to intensive work during the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century. Workers in the UK could work in factories for a long time due to the invigorating effect of the drink. Caffeine was praised for its ability to improve concentration and energy, which allowed businesses to work without interruption. With the expansion of the Industrial Revolution, coffee breaks replaced traditional meal breaks, turning coffee from an elite drink into an everyday stimulant for workers. As Mark Pendergrast notes in the book Not General Principles, the story of coffee that transformed our world. During the First World War, instant coffee, which simplifies the brewing process, became popular among soldiers thanks to the American inventor George Washington, who began mass production of this drink. The soldiers appreciated the opportunity to quickly prepare a George cup even in the trenches. During World War I, coffee became known as Joe's cup, and its consumption increased significantly when the US Army increased orders tenfold. After the war, companies like Nescafe and Maxwell House promoted instant coffee among veterans and civilians, which led to its widespread popularity. But after the Second World War, exploitation on plantations in Latin America provoked communist activity. The United States, fearing the spread of Soviet influence, supported coups d'etat and civil wars in Central America to protect corporate interests. In 1954, in Guatemala, the CIA overthrew President Arbenz, who distributed coffee plantations among the peasants and established the power of General Armas, who abolished reforms and restored repression. This led to decades of violence, maintaining the status of the coffee elite and oppressing workers. In 1970 and 1980, conflicts similar to the Guatemalan one broke out in Nicaragua and El Salvador. In El Salvador, the US-backed army junta was fighting leftist rebels who opposed the government linked to the coffee elite. American death squads participated in battles that claimed the lives of 50,000 people, which led to a drop in coffee exports and the mass emigration of more than 1 million citizens. In the 20th century, coffee became widely produced and popular thanks to industrial innovations in roasting beans and making drinks. By 1995, coffee had won the title of the most popular drink with consumption of over 400 billion cups per year. The Starbucks chain, which became a place of work and communication, arose thanks to Howard Schultz's trip to Italy in 1983, where he was inspired by local cafes. After his return, he created an espresso bar and by 1987 had acquired 6 stores and a factory, planning to open 125 coffee shops. By 2020, Starbucks had 9,000 stores and 30,000 coffee shops worldwide, highlighting the role of coffee in social interaction. There are more than 120 varieties of coffee in the world, but Kopi Luwak, known as the most expensive coffee, is obtained from grains that have passed through the digestive system of musangs. This method supposedly improves the taste, but not all experts agree with this. Kopi Luwak's popularity has grown thanks to marketing, including mentions in shows and movies. The argument for this is the fact that civets choose the best coffee fruits, which made Kopi Luwak rare and expensive. However, today production often takes place in poor conditions, where civets are kept in cages and fed only coffee berries without quality control, which causes them stress and diseases. Incorrect information about the wild origin of the product is often indicated on the packaging. We urge you to avoid buying a Kopi Luwak in order not to contribute to an industry based on cruelty to animals for profit. Let's discuss the effect of coffee on health and recommended dosages. Caffeine, the active ingredient of coffee, enhances cognitive functions and energy, blocking fatigue and stimulating alertness. It is quickly absorbed and acts for several hours, improving concentration and information processing. Caffeine also has a positive effect on mood and activity, although its effect is temporary. Studies show that caffeine reduces fatigue and promotes fat burning, as well as has a positive effect on muscle and brain functions. Regular coffee consumption is associated with improved heart function and reduced risk of various diseases, including diabetes and cardiovascular diseases, while having antioxidant properties. Johns Hopkins University experts identify 9 main benefits of moderate coffee consumption: reduces the likelihood of developing type 2 diabetes, helps prevent heart failure, reduces the risk of Parkinson's disease, supports liver health, reduces the risk of colon cancer in women, increases the likelihood of protection against Alzheimer's disease, reduces the risk of stroke, reduces mortality from coronary heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and kidney disease. Dark roasting of coffee reduces the risk of DNA breaks, which can prevent cancer and tumors. But do not forget that coffee can temporarily increase blood pressure, especially in people with low blood pressure, but this action lasts only 10 to 15 minutes. For those with normal blood pressure, the changes are minimal. Interestingly, in some cases, espresso can even reduce blood pressure. The reaction to coffee is individual and depends on a person's health. With regular coffee consumption, the body adapts and the pressure remains stable. Children under 12 to 14 years old should not drink coffee. Teenagers aged 14 to 18 are recommended to limit their caffeine intake to 200 milligrams per week, which corresponds to about 2 cups of coffee. It is recommended to dilute coffee with milk or cream. The American Academy of Pediatrics opposes the consumption of coffee and caffeinated products by children and adolescents. Caffeine can lead to addiction and negatively affect sleep, and it also has a diuretic effect. Constant coffee consumption reduces sensitivity to caffeine, requiring an increase in dose to achieve the same effect. High doses of caffeine can increase levels of the stress hormone cortisol, causing anxiety and tremors, and can also lead to fever, poor sleep, and diarrhea. Studies indicate a link between caffeine consumption during pregnancy and lower newborn weight, so pregnant and lactating women are advised to limit caffeine to 200 milligrams per day. People with heart disease and mental disorders are advised to consult before using caffeine, as it can increase anxiety. Coffee contains many active substances, some of which can raise cholesterol and disrupt sleep, causing stress and arousal. Regular coffee consumption can increase anxiety. According to psychologist Matthew Walker, author of the book Why We Sleep, the main drawback of coffee is a deterioration in the quality of sleep, which is important for the recovery of the body and information processing. Caffeine stays in the system for a long time, affecting sleep even at night. The irony is that we often use caffeine to cope with fatigue from lack of sleep, which it also causes. Studies show that moderate caffeine intake of up to 400 milligrams per day, which is equal to about 3 to 5 cups of coffee, can be beneficial and not harmful to health. However, due to differences in individual sensitivity to caffeine, a universal dose has not been determined. Crossing the threshold of 500 to 600 milligrams, you can face negative consequences, including an increased risk of suicide if you consume more than 8 cups a day. Serious poisoning can occur when taking 1 to 2 grams of caffeine, and 10 to 14 grams are considered a lethal dose, although drinking 65 cups of coffee at a time is unlikely. We have found out how coffee affects our body, and now let's talk about how climatic conditions affect the cultivation of coffee beans. Climate change threatens to reduce the area suitable for coffee cultivation by 50% by the middle of the century. Arabica, especially sensitive to temperature changes, can face serious problems in survival. Brazil, the largest coffee producer, is projected to lose 25% of the land to Arabica by 2050. Aaron Davis emphasizes that climate fluctuations affect coffee plantations, but there are ways to adapt. One of them is the transfer of coffee cultivation to high altitudes, where climate change creates suitable conditions. This will change traditional farming practices. In addition, there are lesser known but more resilient types of coffee plants, such as Robusta, and new varieties are being developed to adapt to the changing climate. Michael Pollan notes the importance of coffee trees, which spread from Ethiopia to the whole world in a short time, thanks to man. They have gained new territories and become a significant resource, turning people into hard workers whose activities also contribute to the prosperity of these plants. This amazing success is the result of one of the smartest evolutionary strategies ever applied by plants. Of course, it all started by accident, but that's how evolution works. A successful combination of circumstances becomes a strategy. Thanks to her, coffee helped us build exactly the kind of civilization that gave it world domination. And indeed, coffee has become one of the most important drinks on the planet. Cozy coffee shops are located all over the world, and we have prepared a list of the most interesting and unusual of them. The Mocha Mojo Cafe in Chennai is unique in its interior, resembling a giant Lego structure with colorful blocks. The design, created using 3D technology, is inspired by the style of the 60s and 70s, with their emphasis on saturated colors and textures in decoration and furniture. The Espresso Bar d'Espresso in New York, located next to the Bryant Park Library, features an original interior created by the Nima Workshop Bureau. Inspired by the proximity to the library, the designers went beyond the usual bookshelves and tables, creating a unique space with inverted walls and ceiling. Starbucks Cafe in Fukuoka, designed by Kengo Kumo Bureau Associates, demonstrates Kengo Kumo's skill in working with wood. The minimalism of the architecture is complemented by intricate woodwork, where the walls are decorated with thin panels, and the ceiling is an intricate structure of intersecting beams, creating an effect of depth. The London Cafe Dreambags Jaguar shows, designed by Karnofsky Studio, is transformed thanks to the play of light. A change of lighting enlivens the wallpaper with secret symbols, green light immerses in the world of the tropics, red reveals the silhouettes of wild animals, and blue reveals the world of monkeys. The Attendant Cafe in London, created by Pete Tomlinson and Ben Russell, opened in February 2013 in a former public toilet in the Fitzrovia area. The interior of the cafe is unique thanks to the original porcelain urinals from the 1890s from Dalton Co., which now serve as stylish dividers for visitors. The Poison d'Amour Confectionery in Lisbon, designed by Bureau 71 Arquitectos, occupies a historic 18th century building between the Principe Real Garden and the Botanical Garden. The interior is separated from the ancient architecture by a black matte finish, creating a contrast with the new white design of the partitions and furniture in the lobby. The Graffiti Cafe in Varna, designed by the Mode Studio, features a unique and expressive interior with sculptural columns and a ceiling inspired by Escher's work. The Don Cafe House Coffee Shop in Pristina, created by Anarch Bureau, offers a unique interior resembling a bag of coffee beans thanks to sculptural walls made of plywood layers, which gives the establishment a unique character. At Arago Coffee Shop in Bucharest, designed by Loma Arhitectura Studio, 276 teacups hang from the ceiling, creating the effect of a light cloud. During the renovation of the 65-meter space, the original wooden beams were discovered and restored, which are now integrated into the design, complemented by black steel and oak trim. Café Laitlia in Cluj, designed by M. Boken, E. Paul and G. Mosoya, is an affordable and eco-friendly space, fully furnished with recycled cardboard elements, creating a warm and almost homely atmosphere. So, we hope that this video has helped you take a fresh look at your favorite drink and discover the secrets of the perfect coffee. Don't forget to share your impressions in the comments, like and subscribe to our channel to be the first to learn about new interesting videos. See you soon, friends.